when we're upset, when we're angry, who does it come out on? It comes out on the people who are the weakest.
And that is anger displacement.
Literally, I was like,
Emotional damage.
he's really called me out on my bullshit.
Once that is actually said or done, I think damage is quite
Irreparable, true ones, everything.
It's a complete loss of self-respect to the person who's being screamed at.
Don't take to alcohol, don't take to smoking as a stress reliever.
You're screaming at this one, that one's screaming, this one's screaming at that one, that one's... You're just carrying forward that circle of negativity.
What are some of the things that trigger people off? And I think another thing that works very well is exercise.
When you make yourself happy, you'll be able to make people around you happy.
Welcome back to Love Rollercoaster, your go-to place for all things relationships. I am Gaurav Bhagat.
And I'm Renalini.
And today we have a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about something that everyone, and I mean everyone actually faces or suffers from at some point, and that is anger displacement.
Yeah, this is a big one, I mean, all of us are guilty of doing this. Everyone is guilty of taking our frustrations out on people. When we're upset, when we're angry, who does it come out on? It comes out on the people who are the weakest. Generally, it's your spouse. Mostly, it's your kids. And in India, where we have a lot of people who work for us at home, it comes out on the household staff.
Or on the office staff.
And in your workplace, it comes out on your employees or your juniors or your subordinates. So, I mean, I thought it was a really interesting and a really relevant topic to talk about today, because let me give you an example of, something that really brought it home for me this time. And it always takes your kids to call you out on your bullshit, right? So there was work happening at home, and there was one area of the house which was getting done, and a lot of things went wrong with it. And I was very upset. And it was upsetting me a lot. As a result, I was getting a little agitated and frustrated. And one day, I got up in the morning and I found that my daughter was lolling in bed, which she normally does on holiday till about 10 o'clock. I just looked at her and I was very short with her. I was like, get up, go and have a bath. Like every day you're like lolling around so late and this and that. And then I go somewhere else and I come back and again I snap at her for something. And then I go to my room and I'm sitting around and suddenly I get a knock on the door and my son pokes his head in and he goes, Mama, you're really upset right now, right? I said, yeah. He says, you're really upset about, that work that's going on, right? I was like, yeah. So then, can you take it out on that guy? Like, can you scream at that fellow? I said, I can't scream at that fellow. That's not how we do things. You don't scream at people like that. He looks at me and goes, can you not take it out on Noina?
It's crazy.
I was like, literally, I was like,
It's like emotional damage.
no, I was like, this kid,
Yeah.
he's really called me out on my bullshit. So I was like, okay. And then I looked at him and I said, yeah, I am taking it out on her. I've been snapping at her unnecessarily. I mean, she does this every day. I don't scream at her every day. And just today. So I said, okay. I went up to Noina, gave her a big hug. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have screamed at you. This is my own frustrations coming out. And I'm taking it out on you. And the poor girl's just looking at me like this. It's like, okay. And then when I went, he went back to his room. So I went to the room and I was like, this is called displacement of anger, like the anger displacement, right? I'm upset about something and I'm taking it out on somebody else who's not able or will not say anything back to me. So he's like, I know. I faced this all my life. I was like,
Yeah.
but that really, since then, I've become a lot more conscious about this whole thing about, how not to take my frustrations out. And there are times, you realize you have triggers. Like, you must be facing that a lot in office, right?
Yeah, so I see examples of that, all the time. And, at Consortium, we do run a pretty large team. And a lot of the people there are younger. I think Taranjeet, myself, probably, and Arkesh Sharma, probably the oldest people. But I think majority of people there are younger. And I think I see a lot of this. And in fact, just this morning, there was, an instance that had actually come up. And there is a particular person in the organization who's, perhaps facing, a few headwinds, at home, and there are some challenges, etc. And something popped up yesterday in terms of someone questioned, her work ethic externally somewhere else on another group, etc. And of course, that came to her, and her response was not the best. In fact, how she responded was obviously just again exactly the same way, which is reacting to something by virtue of the circumstances that perhaps she was in, pacing, etc. And I called her in today, and I said, "No, let's have a chat." And HR was there, and her manager was there, and we were just chatting, and we're like, "This is not you." Right, what really happened, and what are your what are your thoughts? And she's like, it's just that spur of a moment thing. There was something happening, and I shouldn't have done it. And so exactly what you mentioned. I mean, it happens, in the workplace, and hence, my job as the owner of the organization is also to say stakeholders down and just say, put yourself in his shoes or her shoes. Just look back at the bigger picture. I mean, someone at a point just reacts, but instead of reacting, can you respond? Respond with a bit of mindfulness, and don't go like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just like blast on that person. In fact, just think about it, and maybe just take a deep breath, step away, do a few deep breaths, and then kind of come in. So that's how I tell people to actually approach it, because otherwise, once that is actually said or done, I think damage is quite irreparable. To one's everything.
Self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, I mean, there are a few aspects to this. When you find someone getting unusually agitated, also the person who's facing it, they sometimes do realize, or we don't realize, that there's something else going on with the person.
Of course.
Right? Nobody screams at you for something stupid or something small. I mean, you've done something really minor, and then you're getting the screaming of your life for it. It's very disheartening.
True.
B, you lose a lot of your self-esteem, and especially children. You don't realize you're screaming away at them. You don't realize the impact it's having on them. You scream, you let it out, your frustrations are out, and you're okay. But the recipient of the screaming, you don't know what they're feeling, and they're not going to share, but they've internalized it, and that will probably make them feel really bad about themselves. Then they might end up taking it out on their friends, or if they have a test tomorrow, or if they have something to do tomorrow, they might not really be able to study for it because you messed their head up.
It's a vicious cycle for sure. Like you said, it's going to pass on from one to another. From a parent to a child, from a child could go to a friend. It could happen, of course, in their performance, in school. I see this in office. Yeah.
So if the boss screams at the employee,
this boss doesn't scream. You got to really mess up to get me to scream at someone.
Yeah, I don't think you ever screamed. Even if someone's really messed up, you haven't
screamed. It's happened a couple of times, but yeah, it's rare. But yeah.
Oh, I wanted to see that time. But but the fact is that, in the office, you're screaming at, your junior. Your junior's taking it out on,
of course,
his or her junior. That person is taking it, and everybody's taking it out at home. Because nobody's going to scream back at your senior. Unless you really got the guts and you really, you
want to get fired.
Yeah, you want to either get fired or you have option 2.
How would you approach this though? Or what could people do? Because, and let's look at it from both sides. Let's look at it from the perspective of the person who actually, is screaming and the person who is getting screamed at. I mean, what would be your piece of advice to them?
It takes a very enlightened person to really understand that they're doing this. So first thing is, you have to realize that you're being triggered by something. You're upset about something.
Right.
And try to process what you're going through. When I'm anxious, like, just before travel, I start getting really anxious about certain things. And then I find my anxiety rising. And then I start getting irritable. And then I start snapping little here and there. And that's something that I've really started working on. And as nearing the date of travel or nearing the date of something I need to accomplish, I realize that I'm going to start getting apprehensive or a little agitated. And that's when I'm like, okay, I need to be really conscious about how I behave with my family members, people around me, and things like that. So that is one thing. Understanding that, okay, this is started happening to me. The other thing is, when you're very stressed, just like for me, I go to breath. It is as simple as that. Sit quietly, take deep breaths, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, and do this as many times as it takes you to just calm down and just tell yourself, like, everything's going to be fine, all is well.
Yeah. Yeah, I need a big, proponent of breath work, and it's worked out, really well, for you, for the kids, for even friends to whom you've actually referred this. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So the main thing about this is, our own frustrations with what is happening in our lives. Most of the time, it's either somebody has dumped on you and then you're dumping on someone else.
True.
It happens with the CEO also, right? I mean, something has happened to them. Either it's a problem at home, they're facing it with their spouse, or they're facing it with their, in-laws, or they're facing it, with a situation at home, maybe involving their children.
Sure.
Who,
Yeah.
And then they come to office. I don't know how to handle the thoughts in my head. So I come to office, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, and now I start letting everybody have it.
And you could have another extreme on this as well, right? Where you're having a bad time, or having, whatever, being picked on by someone or something, or circumstances are bad, and you also go really quiet, right? And then you're like not being, communicative at all as well. So sometimes even that happens, and that's probably a warning sign. If someone's like just all of a sudden from being communicative has totally shut shop, is not communicating anymore. So that could be an indication that this is happening to someone.
Huge warning sign, So you have to, pick up on people's behavior. But I also think that for the person who is dishing out the aggression, there is an onus on you yourself to fix your own problems.
Yeah.
Is this whether you need to get help? Like, get help from someone.
Sure.
Again, find someone safe to talk to, or go. I mean, if you're confident enough, and if you don't have that stigma about therapy, then go talk to someone who will be able to help you. Professionals also have a job to do, and they know much more about behavior because they've studied it. So they can help you in ways that your friend or you can't help yourself.
Yeah. What about in a relationship? Okay, suppose you have, again, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. And this is becoming a repetitive issue and it's not working out. Okay, when is it okay for someone to say, okay, this is not working out, we need to go our own ways? When is enough enough?
It's a very subjective thing. Some people will tolerate anything and everything, and some people who won't tolerate very much. And it all boils down to how much you're willing to take from someone. Everything depends on your own sense of self, your own self-esteem, what standards of behavior you hold yourself to, and what standards of behavior you hold others to.
Sure.
Right? Like, I can tell you that I'm not a person who will be able to take bad behavior towards me for too long.
What is some of the long-term damage that this can actually do to relationships, to people? I mean, the short-term, understand, it's something that we think we can get through, but what about a longer-term damage?
The short term is, of course, you're screaming at this one, that one's screaming, this one's screaming at that one's, you're just carrying forward that circle of negativity. And it's not good for anybody. But I think long-term damage, over time, you carry on doing this. Again, it's a complete loss of self-respect to the person who's being screamed at.
Sure.
It affects everything.
Yeah.
And then they're carrying that forward. And I think the most important thing here is that you should, when you realize that you've done something wrong or someone's called you out on it, you should be able to go and say sorry. I'm constantly saying sorry to the children. You less, because I don't think I'm screaming at you.
Yeah, and that's great that you actually do say sorry as much, because I think that's one of my
I don't
weaknesses. I can't say sorry easily, but then I have very little to be sorry about. But that said, tell me about triggers. Okay, tell me about triggers. Like, what are some of the things that trigger people off? Like, what are some of the triggers, because I think once you identify a trigger, then you can probably address that trigger also.
One is when they're apprehensive about something. Then you're a little anxious about a task that you're supposed to complete and you're not able to complete it.
And I think, what worked for me, and this is, of course, something I picked off from BJ Fogg, and BJ, of course, wrote, Tiny Habits, and someone who did certify me in Tiny Habits as well. And he would talk about, the Pearl habits. And I thought that was such a cool thing, right? Because, and how the Pearl habits work is that, let's say you've got this trigger that's, triggering you off. And normally a reaction would be to, respond with, anger or, and just like explode. And he says, in fact, see how you could, instead of responding with anger, if you can, respond with, humor or, create a joke around it or some sarcasm or do something nice for yourself. So I think the Pearl habit concept is really cool. And what that really tells you is that instead of responding with anger, see if you can respond with, humor, maybe a bit of sarcasm perhaps. And also in case you're on the receiving end, rather than responding at that time in a negative way, can you actually maybe sit down and journal, like write down something on a journal saying that, okay, this is what happened and this is how I felt. BJ also talks about the fact that you can actually go and do something nice for yourself. So just because someone was angry with you, or, it doesn't mean that you have to pass that on, but maybe you can actually go out and do, something nice for yourself, and pamper yourself so that the push forth doesn't happen. I don't know. And I think another thing that works really well is exercise, So the thing is that if you're actually going out there and you're like letting off some steam, it could be the gym or could be walking out, yoga. I think that's another area which could actually be a big way where people could actually let go of a lot of this. So if you find yourself, getting angry a lot, I think it's worth exploring the fact that can you let off some steam, in a gym. I mean, you have a punching bag, maybe put on your gloves and, like punching bag away. And I don't know, those could be things that also come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of the don'ts would definitely be don't take to alcohol, don't take to smoking as a stress reliever. I think those would be things that...
Drugs.
Yeah, or drugs. I think those are absolutely no's, right? Like you can't go down that path. And I see a lot of people, say, oh, my job is so stressful and my boss is an ass. And, which is why I've taken to, smoking or drinking. And then they drink, then they go home. And then, the sides which probably wouldn't come out would probably come out and all of that. So hence, we see a lot of, even in blue collar workers, we see a lot of, beating of spouses or kids and all of that. So I think that's all anger displacement, right? And it's been around forever.
It's frustration.
And it's not going to go away. But I think that, hopefully by listening in to a conversation like this and some of the things that we've spoken about, you would actually be able to go ahead and bring some of those into, your lives or lives of people that you may have actually seen. And that truly is what this podcast, and these conversations are all about. So we're keeping it short. But just know this is really a big, big, big issue. And it's something that if we can address, it will be absolutely awesome. Anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah, I think the main thing is learn to manage yourself. Learn to manage your emotions. Learn to realize when you're getting upset, angry, anxious, triggered. And try to work through those. I know it's not easy. It's one of the hardest things in the world to do. But one must manage their own emotions, because if you don't, it comes out on everybody else. And that's really is the worst thing that one can do. So yeah, like when you make yourself happy, you'll be able to make people around you happy.
True that. Yeah, well said. And I think that's where we're going to leave this one as well. Again, look out for future episodes. Again, let us know who you'd like to have, the topics that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. And this is Gaurav and Mrinalini signing off on Love Rollercoaster.